Now, I want us to stop and pause because this is now kind of where we're getting into how to actually measure it. So, what you need to realize is that this is a picture of a protractor, and there's lots of little tiny numbers, and there's lots of lines, and it can seem super confusing, but if you really stop and think about it, it's really not. You just have to be careful, and you have to use a lot of common sense. So, what we do is we're going to measure, using the protractor, how many degrees the angle is, okay? So if I have a right angle, it's 90 degrees, and I would write it as 90 degrees. So what's confusing and tricky about this is you have to pick up your protractor, and they're clear, you can see through them, and you have to pick it up, and you actually have to put it on top of whatever you're measuring. So if you are measuring, first of all, this would be called angle CAB, or I could call it angle BAC. I would have to put my protractor on and actually measure it. So if you can't, I know you can't really see this, but here's the B, here's the, right there, okay? So do you see underneath, they basically picked up the protractor and put it on this. What you need to realize is that this vertex, if you look at a protractor, inside, it doesn't look like a sun and all the rays, right? In the middle of that sun, there's a little T, and that's where you put that dot on. And you have to line it up and put the dot on top of it. If you do that, then you can actually measure it. So, hang on 1 second, I'm going to grab a protractor. And that way you can see it a little bit better. And then later today, what you're going to do is you're going to actually go out and try to practice measuring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you is here I have this angle, okay? And I'm going to flip this, move this. Here's my protractor. And if I zoom in, what happens is a lot of times kids put it upside down and they turn it over and they're like, oh, but look at all the numbers are backwards. So that's a clue that it's upside down or needs to flip over. If you look, this is a protractor and there's a lot of numbers and it might seem confusing. But basically what you need to know is that when you have an angle, so here's my angle, you need to line up. That's okay. Can you go ask? I'm doing a video. Sorry. Can you ask Mrs. Markloff? That's okay. What you're going to do is you have to line it up. So if you look at this, if this were A, B, C, I know that B is my vertex. So that's in the middle. So what I'm going to do is if I look at my protractor, in the middle where this line 90 degree meets along with this bottom line at 0, my vertex needs to go right in the middle of that, okay? The second thing you need to realize is that the bottom line has to be lined up on 0 because we always start at 0. I'm not going to start at 20. That doesn't make sense. So it's kind of weird at first. We have to shift it and rotate it so that it's lined up at 0, okay? Now, what gets confusing is the kids always look and they're always like, oh, 120. Or, oh, 60, there's 2 numbers. Like, which one do I pick? What you have to do first before you measure it is think, is this obtuse or acute? If it's obtuse, it's going to be more than 90. If it's acute, it's going to be less. I'm hoping that you're thinking this is obtuse. So automatically, common sense-wise, I know this is going to be more than 90 degrees. So if I'm going to pick between 120, 120, or 60, I'm going to pick 120 because that's more than 90 degrees. But another way, actually, that you would use this is if you start at the bottom and you look, and here's my line, right? And here's my arrow. I'm going to look at my arrow. Is it pointing? I want to measure. There's 2 scales. There's inside numbers, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way up, or there's outsides, 180, 190, and it goes up this way. I need to figure out if I'm using the inside or the outside numbers. Do you think it makes sense? Would I start at 0 and count up, or would I start at 180 and count down? I'm hoping you were like, oh, it makes more sense to start at 0. So I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to count all the way up. So it starts here. That would be 10 degrees. Nope, nope, nope. 70, nope. Higher, 90, nope. Oh, 120. My answer is 120 because I used this inner scale, this inside number, and I did not use this outer scale. So if it's the inner scale, I'm getting 120. And if I'm using common sense, I'm like, oh, that's an obtuse angle. That's also going to be 120 degrees. Okay? So Mrs. Markloff is now here.
Hi, everybody.
So far, Mrs. Markloff, as a recap, we talked about naming angles and how there's 2 different ways to name them. So, like, we talked about this angle right here and how it would be angle. We always look at the vertex, and that's the middle thing because that's the actual angle I'm measuring. So we go BAC or CAB.
Correct.
And how you can do it either way. And then we talked a little bit about how a protractor is actually the tool that we use to measure angles and how you have to be able to line it up and use common sense and look at the scale and actually see what makes sense. So we kind of just talked a little bit, but I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
So I'm going to skip this too. I honestly think I'm going to skip these. Let's look at this one.
And let's get just measuring.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's look at this one right here. This is already lined up for us. I'll actually trace over so you can see. Okay. So right now I want you on your paper to write down, did you use, if I'm looking at this, my K is my vertex. This would be angle J, K, L, or angle L, K, J. And I'm going to look at, and they lined up the vertex in the middle of that something. And then here's my bottom line. And I'm going to look at my arrow.
Have we talked about how when we first look at an angle, we want to decide whether it's obtuse or acute?
First, let's think about that. Is this acute or obtuse? Hoping you're thinking obtuse because it's more than 90. So in your head, you should be thinking of this is going to be more than 90 degrees. So now what I need you to do is look at the scale. If this is 180 and this is 0, I'm hoping you're thinking you're going to use the outer scale, the outer numbers, and not the inner numbers because I want to start at 0 because that makes sense. So if I go up, I can see that I'm between, and you can't really see that, but I think it's 70 or 110. Right now, I know that I'm using the outside numbers, so I know that it's 110, and I also know it's 110 because I already thought about how it's an obtuse angle, and it has to be more than 90 degrees.
70 would make it acute, 110 would make it obtuse, so 110 also makes sense.
So I know that it is greater than 90. I know that it's 110 degrees. And I use the outside scale because that's the outside numbers, which we're going to practice. If you are still confused, no worries. Now, I think what we're going to do is not that. Actually practice a couple so I can show you, so then you can do some work yourself. Okay, so I'm going to actually give this some letters. Let's do T, U, and V. So I could call this angle VTU or UTV. Okay, now I'm actually going to measure it. And as a reminder, whatever the vertex is, which is that corner inside T, which is where the two rays meet, I'm going to put that inside the middle of my protractor so it's right on the line. Now I have to rotate it so the line is on the 0. So I'm going to bring it down.
Now, how did you know not to stop on that first line?
Because when I was doing it, there's nothing there. I can't measure anything.
I'm not really on the angle yet.
I'm not.
Line,
this isn't. This needs to be underneath the protractor. And it's not. So I'm just going to keep turning it until it is. And now I'm going to realign it and just set it up. You have to be very precise.
And you're going to think to yourself, is this acute or obtuse? So that I have some ideas in my head of what I'm looking for.
In my head, if I even move this back, I know that this is an acute angle because it's less than 90. So that's going to help me decide which number to use. So I have it here. I'm going to look at this bottom number. The 0 is on the inside, or am I going to start with 180 on the outside? I'm hoping you're thinking the 0 on the inside. I'm going to follow my finger up, and that is on 40. And that makes sense because the other option is 140, and this is an acute angle, and that does not make sense. So I know that this is a 40-degree angle. So my answer for this would be 40 degrees. Okay? I think we're going to do one more, and then you're going to go out and practice. We're going to do this one. And this could be angle QRS or angle SRQ. Okay? Now I'm going to put my thing on. And once again, half of you guys are going to do this. And you're going to say it's backwards. So you have to flip it over because those numbers don't make sense. Now I know my R is my vertex. So I have to put my sun in the middle, the protractor right in the middle of that vertex right there. And then I have to line up the bottom. I can do either or. I could turn it this way and start at 0. Or I could turn it that way. It doesn't matter. Before I do that, I'm going to look. This seems about 90, honestly. So this is where it gets tricky and where you're going to have to actually rely on those scales. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to rotate it so that it's on the 0. And I'm going to use my outer scale because my inside scale is 180, and I don't want to start there. So I'm going to use my outside number, and I'm going to look. It's at 90 degrees. So then I know that this is actually a right angle, and it is 90 degrees, and my prediction was correct. So now what you're going to do, since we are done with this, is you are going to get a packet when you're done. You're going to tell your teacher that you're done. And then you are going to try on your own to do in the packet pages 37, 38, and 39. When you are done, you're going to go check the answer keys and see how you did. And if you are confused, you're going to raise your hand so that somebody can come help you. And then this week we're going to be practicing measuring angles and eventually drawing them. Yes. After you get it checked, you can go out in the hallway with
the student teachers.
and then you can work on that. Okay?